Rich man told his daughter to choose a new mom among the wealthy, but she preferred the street cleaner. Richard Anderson took a deep breath as he adjusted his tie for the 5th time that morning. He had lost his wife 6 months ago and now felt the weight of raising his 10-year-old daughter alone. The pressures of New York City's high society were constant, and everyone seemed to have an opinion on how he should rebuild his life. That's when he decided to settle the matter once and for all. He summoned 4 of the most elegant and influential women in his social circle for a special meeting at his Upper East Side mansion. The idea was simple: let Emily choose which one would be her new mother. "Emily, come here, sweetheart," called Richard, his voice echoing through the grand hall of the house. The girl descended the marble stairs with slow steps, her brown hair tied in a simple ponytail. She wore a beige blouse and a light blue skirt, clothes her mother had picked out months before. Her brown eyes carried a sadness that would break anyone's heart. The 4 women stood elegantly in the center of the hall. Victoria Miller, the widow of a banker, wore a beige dress that accentuated her tanned skin. Beside her, Catherine Worthington, heiress to a traditional New York family, displayed a black dress worth more than an economy car. Jennifer Spencer, owner of a jewelry chain, shimmered in a navy blue dress, while Amanda Thompson, daughter of influential politicians, stood out in her dark green gown. "Sweetheart," Richard began, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "These ladies are very special. Any one of them could be a wonderful mother to you. I want you to choose which one you'd like to join our family." Emily looked at each woman curiously. They smiled rehearsed smiles, each trying to appear more motherly than the next. Victoria crouched to the girl's level. "Hi, darling. I'm Victoria. I adore children, and I have a beach house where we could spend weekends." Catherine wasn't far behind. "And I'm Catherine. I could take you to see Paris. Have you been to Disneyland there?" Jennifer smiled sweetly. "I'm Jennifer, sweetheart. I could give you all the jewels a princess deserves." Amanda finished. "And I'm Amanda. My family knows very important people. You could have anything you wanted." Richard watched the scene with satisfaction. He was sure one of these women would be perfect for his daughter. They were all wealthy, refined, and could offer Emily the life of luxury she deserved. The girl stayed silent for a few seconds, studying each candidate carefully. Then, suddenly, she walked to the large window overlooking the street and pointed outside. "I want her," Emily said in a firm voice that surprised everyone. Richard approached the window, confused. Outside, on the sidewalk in front of the mansion, a woman around 50 was sweeping dried leaves. She wore a grey cap, a faded orange shirt and work overalls. It was Dorothy Williams, the street cleaner who had been responsible for that block for over 15 years. "Emily, what are you saying?" Richard asked, not understanding. "I want Miss Dorothy to be my mom," the girl repeated, still pointing at the window. The 4 candidates exchanged shocked and indignant glances. Victoria was the first to speak up. "Richard, this is absurd. The child doesn't know what she's saying." "I agree," Catherine said haughtily. "It's just a childish whim. She needs to understand reality." Richard felt anger rising in his chest. He had planned this meeting so carefully, and now his daughter was humiliating him in front of New York's most important women. "Emily, stop this nonsense. Pick one of these fine ladies," he said, trying to stay calm. "No," the little girl replied, crossing her arms. "I only want Miss Dorothy." Richard took a deep breath and walked to the porch, motioning for the street cleaner. Dorothy looked up, surprised, and pointed to herself as if asking if he really meant her. Richard nodded yes. A few minutes later, Dorothy climbed the mansion's steps hesitantly. She had never been inside such a luxurious home. Her calloused hands gripped the straw broom she always carried. "Did you call for me?" she asked, removing her cap to reveal grey hair tied in a simple bun. "Yes, please come in," said Richard, still processing the situation. Dorothy entered the hall and immediately felt the weight of the 4 elegant women's stares. Her simple clothes contrasted sharply with their expensive dresses and sparkling jewelry. "Miss Dorothy!" Emily shouted, running to hug the street cleaner. The older woman smiled warmly and stroked the girl's hair. "Hello, my angel. How are you?" "Dad, I want Miss Dorothy to be my new mom," Emily declared, holding the street cleaner's hand. The silence that followed was deafening. Dorothy flushed with embarrassment and shook her head. No, sweetheart. That's not possible. I'm just a simple worker. I'm not worthy of a family like yours, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. Richard looked at Dorothy with a mix of pity and irritation. How could his daughter prefer this plain woman over the refined ladies he had handpicked? Emily, that's impossible. Miss Dorothy has her own life, her own job, he tried to explain. But I don't want anyone else, Emily cried, clinging even tighter to the street cleaner. Only she can be my mom. Tears began streaming down the girl's face. Dorothy knelt and hugged her tenderly. Hush, my angel. Don't cry like that, she whispered, her own voice choked. Victoria lost her patience. Richard, this has gone too far. The child is throwing a tantrum. Exactly, Amanda agreed. You can't seriously consider a domestic worker for such an important role. Catherine shook her head disdainfully. This is embarrassing for all of us. Jennifer stayed silent, but her expression made it clear she agreed with the others. Richard felt torn between anger and confusion. He couldn't understand why his daughter was being so stubborn. Emily, go to your room, we'll talk about this later, he ordered. No, I won't leave, the girl shot back, clinging even tighter to Dorothy. Dorothy looked at Richard with pleading eyes. Mr. Richard, I'm sorry for this misunderstanding. I should get back to my work now, she said, gently trying to free herself from Emily's grip. You won't, Emily shouted. If Miss Dorothy leaves, I won't eat any more. The threat only made Richard angrier. He had never seen his daughter so defiant. Emily Anderson, stop this right now. I won't stop, she retorted, plopping down on the hall floor, arms crossed in protest. The four stepmother candidates watched with growing outrage. Victoria stepped closer to Richard. You need to put your foot down. This is disgraceful. Dorothy, seeing everyone's discomfort, tried once more to leave. My angel, I have to go to work. People are waiting for me to finish cleaning the street. Then I'm going with you, Emily declared, jumping to her feet. Emily! Shouted Richard, but the girl was already running toward the door. Dorothy ran after her, worried. Richard and the four women followed them to the sidewalk, where Emily stood beside the street cleaner and grabbed one of the smaller brooms from the cleaning cart. I'm going to work with Miss Dorothy, the girl announced, starting to sweep the leaves with clumsy movements. Neighbors began gathering at their windows and balconies, curious about the unusual scene. A wealthy girl sweeping the street alongside a street cleaner was something no one expected to see in that upscale neighborhood. Richard felt his face burn with shame. Many familiar faces were watching, and he knew this story would spread quickly through the city's social circles. Emily, get inside right now, he ordered in an authoritative voice. No, I'll only go in if Miss Dorothy comes with me, the girl replied, still sweeping. Dorothy was mortified. She never imagined she'd be at the center of such an awkward situation. Mr. Richard, please, I beg you, let me take the girl back inside. Later, I'll explain to her that this isn't possible, she said, tears in her eyes. Richard hesitated for a moment. The four candidates watched with expressions of complete disapproval. Fine, he agreed, defeated by exhaustion. But I want an explanation later. Dorothy took Emily's hand and gently led her back into the mansion. The four women followed, but kept a respectful distance from the street cleaner. In the living room, Emily refused to let go of Dorothy's hand. The street cleaner looked at Richard with a sincere, apologetic expression. Mr. Richard, I don't know how this happened. I swear I never encouraged your daughter to... I know how, Emily interrupted. Miss Dorothy was always kind to me when Mommy took me for walks outside. Richard stopped breathing for a second. This was completely new information to him. What do you mean, Emily? When did your mother take you for walks? Every Tuesday and Thursday. Mommy said we had to help people in need. We'd go to Miss Dorothy's neighborhood to bring food and medicine, the girl explained, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The silence in the room was absolute. Richard felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. His wife, Elizabeth, had never mentioned these visits. And Miss Dorothy always looked after me when Mommy was talking to other people, Emily continued. She taught me how to make a kite and told me beautiful stories. Dorothy lowered her eyes, embarrassed at being exposed like this. Your wife was a very good woman, Mr. Richard. She asked me not to tell you about the visits because she said you'd worry, she murmured. Richard felt the world spinning. Elizabeth had hidden an entire part of her life from him. Why? What else didn't he know about the woman he'd been married to for 15 years? How long did this go on? He asked, his voice hoarse. 3 years, Dorothy replied. Until she got sick. Emily nodded. Mommy said that after she was gone, Miss Dorothy would watch over me from afar. That's why I always wave to her when she passes by on the street. Richard now understood why his daughter always ran to the window when Dorothy passed by with her cleaning cart. He thought it was just childish curiosity, but it was actually a deep bond formed over years of secret companionship. Victoria cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation's direction. Richard, this doesn't change the fact that the situation is inappropriate. A child can't choose her own stepmother based on sentimentality. Especially when there are far more suitable options available, Catherine added, gesturing to herself and the other candidates. Dorothy felt increasingly uncomfortable. Those women made it clear she didn't belong in that environment. Ladies, you're right. I should leave now, she said, trying once more to say goodbye. No. Emily grabbed her hand even tighter. Dad, if Miss Dorothy leaves, I'll run away from home. Richard massaged his temples, feeling a headache coming on. The situation was completely out of control. Emily, you're being irrational. These ladies can offer you things that... He began, but was cut off by his daughter. I don't want things, I want love, the girl shouted. Miss Dorothy loves me for real, not because of your money. The child's brutal honesty left everyone speechless. Dorothy couldn't hold back the tears streaming down her weathered face. My angel, you're very special to me, she whispered. But your life is here with your father and these elegant ladies. No, my life is where there's real love, Emily insisted. Richard looked at the 4 candidates and saw poorly concealed irritation on their faces. None of them showed the genuine affection Dorothy had for his daughter. Dorothy, he said, using her first name for the first time, would you stay for dinner? I think we need to talk more calmly. The 4 women exchanged glances, clearly displeased with the invitation. Mr. Richard, I can't. I need to finish my work, and then I have to take care of my home, Dorothy replied. Please, Emily begged, just tonight, so we can talk. Richard saw the plea in his daughter's eyes and felt something stir in his heart. It had been months since he'd seen Emily truly happy. Since her mother's passing, the girl had become a shadow of herself. I insist, he said, at least so we can understand this situation better. Dorothy hesitated, looking down at her work clothes. I'm not dressed properly for... You're perfect, Emily interrupted, smiling for the first time in weeks. Victoria could no longer hold back. Richard, this is ridiculous. You can't seriously be considering... What I'm considering is my daughter's happiness, he replied, his voice growing firmer. But think of your family's reputation, Amanda exclaimed. What will people say? Maybe I've cared too much about what people say and too little about what really matters, Richard said, surprising even himself. Catherine shook her head in disbelief. You're letting a child make important decisions about her future. And maybe a child can see things we adults have lost sight of, Richard countered. Jennifer, who had stayed quiet until then, finally spoke. Richard, I hope you reconsider this with a clear head. We all have so much to offer. I know you do, he replied, and I sincerely appreciate your interest, but perhaps I need to better understand what my daughter truly needs. The 4 women realized the situation had changed drastically. They were no longer the ones being evaluated. Their values and motives were now in question. Well, Victoria said, gathering her designer purse, if you change your mind, you know where to find me. The same goes for me, Catherine added, clearly offended. Amanda and Jennifer followed suit, bidding cold goodbyes and leaving the mansion in hurried steps. Dorothy watched them go and felt even more out of place. Mr. Richard, I've caused a big problem. Maybe it's best if I leave too, she said. No! Emily rushed to stand between Dorothy and the door. You're not leaving. Richard took in the scene, his desperate daughter shielding the street cleaner as if her life depended on it. Dorothy, in turn, looked at Emily with a maternal love that was impossible to fake. Dorothy, he said, why did my wife trust you so much? The street cleaner took a deep breath before answering, because she knew I understood the pain of being a mother. What do you mean? I also had a daughter, Mr. Richard. I lost her when she was the same age as Emily. The impact of the revelation left Richard speechless. Emily looked at Dorothy with surprise and compassion. Miss Grace passed away 8 years ago, Dorothy continued, her voice trembling. Your wife knew that. That's why she trusted me to take care of Emily. She knew I would never let a child suffer what my daughter suffered. What happened? Asked Richard, genuinely interested. She got sick. I worked 3 jobs to pay for her treatment, but it wasn't enough. Your wife heard my story and started helping other families so they wouldn't go through what I did. Emily moved closer to Dorothy and took her hand. Is that why you always look sad when you see me? No, my dear, I'm happy. You remind me that there are still special children in the world and that I can do something to protect them. Richard felt emotions swirling in his chest. He was beginning to understand why Elizabeth had hidden her visits to Dorothy's neighborhood from him. She knew he wouldn't approve, focused as he was only on work and social commitments. Elizabeth never told me about this, he murmured. She wanted to, Dorothy said. But she was afraid you wouldn't understand. She said you were a good man, but sometimes good men get lost under all that pressure. The observation struck Richard like lightning. How many important things had he missed by always being too busy? How many moments with Elizabeth and Emily had he wasted? Dorothy, he said, his voice softer, would you stay for dinner? I'd love to hear more about these outings with Elizabeth. The street cleaner hesitated, looking at her work clothes. Mr. Richard, I don't have proper clothes for... Your clothes are perfect, Emily interrupted. Mommy always said a person's beauty is in their heart, not their clothes. Richard felt a lump in his throat. Those were the exact words Elizabeth used to say, but he had forgotten them over the years of busy social life. Please, Dorothy, it would be an honor to have you with us, he said, and for the first time, he meant the invitation. Dorothy looked at Emily, who was watching her with pleading eyes, and then at Richard, who for the first time treated her with genuine respect. All right, she agreed, but I'll need to go home afterward. Emily jumped for joy and hugged Dorothy tightly. Yay! We're having dinner together! Richard watched his daughter's genuine happiness and felt something open in his heart. It had been months since he'd seen Emily truly happy. During dinner, served in the kitchen to make Dorothy feel more at ease, Richard discovered a whole world he hadn't known. Dorothy told him about Elizabeth's visits, how she helped struggling families, and the secret project they were developing to create a community daycare. Your wife dreamed of opening a daycare so mothers like me could work without worrying about their children, Dorothy explained. She had already set aside the money and chosen the location. I had no idea, Richard confessed, feeling smaller by the minute. She was going to tell you when the project was ready. She wanted to surprise you, Dorothy said. She always talked about how proud you'd be of her. Emily listened to the stories with shining eyes. It was as if she were discovering a side of her mother she'd never known. Did Mommy bring toys for the poor children? She asked. She did. And medicine, food, clothes? Sometimes even furniture, replied Dorothy. Your mother had a heart of gold. Richard felt a mix of pride and guilt. Pride for the generous woman he had married, and guilt for having been so oblivious to her dreams. Dorothy, he said, why do you still work on the streets? With your education? The street cleaner interrupted him. How do you know about my education? Emily mentioned seeing diplomas at your house, he said. Dorothy smiled sadly. I have 2 college degrees, one in education and another in social work. But after I lost my daughter, I couldn't work with children directly anymore. It hurt too much. Street cleaning brought me peace. It's honest work and lets me help the community in another way. But you could have a more comfortable life. Comfort isn't just about money, Mr. Richard. It's peace of mind. It's knowing you're making a difference in people's lives, even if it's just sweeping their streets. Emily looked at her father. See, Dad? Miss Dorothy is wise. Richard nodded, genuinely impressed by the depth of the woman he had once judged so superficially. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. After dinner, Richard insisted Dorothy take his chauffeured car home. The street cleaner protested, saying she could take the bus, but Emily begged her to accept. Just this once, Miss Dorothy, please, the girl pleaded. During the ride, Richard sat in the back with Dorothy and Emily. That's when he discovered where the street cleaner lived, a modest little house in Williamsburg, impeccably clean and organized. Would you like to come in and see my home? Dorothy asked Emily. The girl looked at her father with hopeful eyes. Richard, still processing everything he'd learned that day, agreed. Dorothy's house was small but cozy. The walls were covered in photographs, some of a girl who was clearly her late daughter, others from graduation ceremonies, and, surprisingly, several pictures of Emily with Elizabeth during their secret visits. Mom really did come here, Emily murmured, touching one of the photos. She did. She loved having coffee in my kitchen and talking about you, Dorothy said. Richard studied the photos closely. In everyone, Elizabeth smiled in a way he hadn't seen in years. A genuine, content smile, like someone doing something that truly mattered. She looked happy, he remarked. She was happy, Dorothy confirmed. She said helping others made her feel truly useful. On the living room wall, Richard noticed a framed diploma in education and another in social work, both with honors. Dorothy really was an educated woman who had chosen a different path. Why didn't you ever try to change careers after healing from your loss? He asked. Who said I healed? Dorothy replied with a sad smile. You learn to live with the pain, Mr. Richard, but it never completely goes away. And that's okay. It reminds me every day to be grateful for the life I still have. Emily walked over to a shelf with children's books and some old toys. Were these Grace's? She asked gently. They were. I keep them all with care. Sometimes I pretend she'll still come back to play, Dorothy admitted. Richard's heart ached. This woman had endured a pain he couldn't even imagine, yet she still found strength to care for other children. Dorothy, he said, may I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you have anyone else in your life, family, a partner? No. After I lost Grace, I closed myself off to relationships. My sister lives out of state, my parents are gone. It's just me. Don't you feel lonely? Sometimes. But loneliness has taught me to cherish moments like this, when someone truly sees me as a person, not just as the street cleaner on the block. Richard felt ashamed. How many times had he walked past Dorothy without even greeting her? She had been sweeping in front of his house for years and he had never really noticed her. Dorothy, I need to apologize. Why? For treating you as invisible, for never acknowledging your work, your importance. Dorothy smiled. You don't need to apologize. You're no different from most people. We street cleaners are used to being ignored. But that's not right. It isn't, but it's the reality. That's why your wife was so special. She saw me as a person. Emily was flipping through Grace's photo album and called Dorothy over. Miss Dorothy, Grace looked so much like me when she was little. The street cleaner walked closer and looked at the photo Emily was holding. It was true. There was a striking resemblance. She did, Dorothy agreed, her voice trembling. That's why from the first day I saw you, I felt a special connection. Do you think Grace would be happy knowing you're taking care of me? Dorothy had to sit down for a moment, moved by the question. I think so, my dear. She was always a kind girl. She'd love knowing her mama is helping another child. Richard watched their interaction and realized something he had lost sight of. Emily's need for a motherly figure who truly understood and loved her unconditionally. Dorothy, he said, what would you think about Emily spending some weekends here with you? The street cleaner looked at him, surprised. Mr. Richard, I don't know if that would be proper. Why? You're an educated, responsible person and you clearly love my daughter. Maybe it's exactly what she needs." "Dad, are you serious?" Emily asked, her eyes shining with hope. "I am, but only if Dorothy agrees." Dorothy looked at Emily, then at Richard. She was torn between her desire to care for the girl and her fear of growing too attached and suffering another loss. "I need to think," she said honestly. "Of course," Richard agreed. "There's no rush." When it was time to leave, Emily hugged Dorothy tightly. "Miss Dorothy, no matter what you decide, I want you to know I love you so much." "I love you too, my dear," the street cleaner replied, holding back tears. In the car on the way home, Emily was more animated than Richard had seen her in months. "Dad, Miss Dorothy is really special, isn't she?" "She is, sweetheart. Very special." "Do you understand now why I chose her?" Richard thought for a moment before answering. "I think I'm starting to. You saw something in her that took me too long to notice." "What?" "Real love. No strings, no conditions. Love for who you are, not what you have." Emily smiled. "Exactly. The other ladies were pretty and rich, but they didn't love me. Miss Dorothy loves me for real." That night, Richard lay awake for hours thinking about everything he had discovered. His wife had lived a parallel life of generosity he had known nothing about. His daughter had shown an emotional wisdom that humbled him, and a simple street cleaner had shown him what true dignity and unconditional love really meant. The next morning, Richard made a decision that would change everything. Instead of going straight to the office, he drove to the street where Dorothy worked. He found her sweeping the same corner as always, focused on her task. "Good morning, Dorothy," he greeted her, stepping out of the car. She looked up, surprised. "Good morning, Mr. Richard. Is something wrong with Emily?" "No, she's fine. Actually, I came to talk to you." Dorothy stopped sweeping and gave him her full attention. "I spent the whole night thinking about our conversation yesterday," he said, "and I need to make you an offer." "What kind of offer?" "I want to offer you a job at my company, leading the social responsibility department I plan to create." Dorothy was stunned. "Mr. Richard, I don't know what to say." "You could continue the work my wife started, help families in need, create social programs, make a real difference. But I don't have experience in big companies. You have something far more valuable: heart and real understanding of people's struggles. The rest we can teach you." Dorothy leaned on her broom, trying to process the offer. "And Emily?" "She'd still be your friend. You could see each other whenever you wanted. No pressure, no obligations, just the natural bond you already share." "You're not doing this just because your daughter insisted, are you?" Richard shook his head. "I'm doing it because I recognize value when I see it, and because I realize my company needs someone like you to have real purpose." Dorothy looked at the broom in her hands, then at Richard, and finally at the street she'd swept for so many years. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." "And if I accept, can I keep living in my house? I don't want luxuries, just my independence." "Naturally. Actually, that reminds me. Emily is eager to spend a weekend at your place, if you'll allow it, of course." Dorothy smiled. "That I'll gladly accept. It'll be a pleasure to have her." Richard said goodbye and returned to his car, feeling lighter than he had in months. For the first time since losing Elizabeth, he felt he was doing something she would approve of. At the office, his secretary informed him that the 4 potential stepmother candidates had called, wanting to reschedule meetings. Richard asked her to tell them he'd reach out when convenient. There was no point forcing a situation that clearly wasn't what Emily needed. His daughter had shown remarkable intuition in choosing Dorothy, and he was beginning to understand why. During lunch, Richard received an unexpected call. It was Dorothy. "Mr. Richard, I accept your offer," she said, her voice emotional. "Are you sure?" "I am, but with one condition." "What is it?" "I want to use part of my salary to continue the daycare project your wife planned. I think it would be a way to honor her memory." Richard felt his eyes well up. "Dorothy, it would be an honor. In fact, I can contribute personally too. Elizabeth left a special account for social projects that I never knew how to use." "So do we have a deal?" "We have a deal." That afternoon, Richard came home early and found Emily playing alone in the garden. She ran to hug him when she saw him. "Dad, how was your day?" "It was very special, sweetheart. I have news for you." "What news?" "Dorothy is going to work with me at the company, and you'll be able to visit her whenever you want." Emily squealed with joy and jumped. "Really?" She said yes. She did, and more. "We're going to make Mommy's dream come true by opening a daycare to help other families." The girl grew serious for a moment. "Would Mommy be happy?" "Very happy, and proud of you for showing us the right way." Emily hugged her father tightly. "Thank you for understanding, Dad. I know it wasn't easy. You taught me something very important, sweetheart. That a child's heart sometimes sees things adults have lost sight of." In the days that followed, the Anderson family's life changed completely. Dorothy began working at Richard's company, initially 3 days a week, keeping her street cleaner job on the other days until she could find a proper replacement. Emily spent her first weekend at Dorothy's house and came back radiant, full of stories to tell. She had helped with cooking, met the neighbors, played at the local park, and discovered a world completely different from her own. "Dad, Miss Dorothy taught me how to make a kite," she excitedly shared. "And her neighbors are really nice. There's a lady who makes the best pastries in the world." Richard smiled, seeing his daughter genuinely happy for the first time in months. "And what did you think of the experience?" "I loved it. Can I go again next weekend?" "If Dorothy agrees, of course." Dorothy's integration into the company was surprisingly smooth. Her degrees and hands-on experience with underprivileged communities quickly earned her the respect of the staff. She had a practical, human approach that perfectly complemented Richard's business vision. Together, they began developing the daycare project, using the funds Elizabeth had left as a foundation. Dorothy knew exactly what the community needed, and Richard had the resources and connections to make the project a reality. "Elizabeth chose the perfect location," Dorothy said, showing Richard the plot his wife had selected. "It's right in the heart of the community, near the health center and the school." "How long did she spend planning this?" Richard asked, impressed by the level of detail in the project. 2 years. She visited the site every week, talked to the mothers, studied their needs. Your wife was incredibly dedicated." Richard felt a mix of pride and sadness. Pride for the generous woman he had been married to, and sadness for missing the chance to support her while she was alive. 3 months after the day Emily had chosen Dorothy, the daycare was nearly complete. Richard decided to surprise the 2 most important women in his life. "Emily, Dorothy, come with me. I want to show you something," he said one Saturday afternoon. They went to the construction site where the daycare was being built. Richard had hired the best professionals to speed up the work, and now the building was practically finished. "Wow!" Emily exclaimed. "It's beautiful!" Dorothy was speechless, watching Elizabeth's dream come to life. "Richard," she murmured, "this is more than Elizabeth ever imagined." "She deserved to have her dreams realized in the best way possible," he replied. "What are we going to name the daycare?" Emily asked. Richard and Dorothy exchanged glances. They had discussed it many times but hadn't reached a decision. "How about Elizabeth Anderson Daycare?" Dorothy suggested. "No," Emily said, shaking her head. "It has to be Hope Daycare, because that's what Mom wanted to give families. Hope." Richard and Dorothy smiled. Once again, Emily had found the perfect solution. "Hope Daycare is perfect," Richard agreed. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The daycare's opening took place on a sunny Sunday in October. The entire community was there, along with employees from Richard's company, and to his surprise, several high society figures who had grown curious about the project. Among the guests was Ms. Jenkins, head of urban sanitation and Dorothy's former supervisor, who couldn't contain her pride. "Dorothy was always special," she told Richard during the ceremony. "I've never seen anyone so dedicated to their work and to people." "Why was she never promoted?" Richard asked. "Because she never wanted to be. She always said she was happy on the streets, taking care of the city, but I knew she had the potential for so much more." Richard looked at Dorothy, who was surrounded by children from the community. telling stories as they waited for the official ceremony to begin. She had swapped her street cleaner uniform for a simple yet elegant dress that Emily had helped her pick out, but she still carried the same warmth and charm as always. "Richard," a familiar voice called from behind him. He turned and saw Victoria, one of the stepmother candidates Emily had rejected. "Victoria, I didn't expect to see you here." "I was curious," she admitted. "I heard about the project and, well, I have to say I'm impressed." Richard noticed a different tone in her voice, less arrogant, more humble. "The truth is, I've been thinking about what happened that day," Victoria continued, "and I realized your daughter saw something we all missed." "What do you mean?" "Authenticity. We were so focused on impressing you with our wealth and connections that we forgot what really matters to a child." Richard nodded, respecting her honesty. "Dorothy wasn't trying to impress anyone," Victoria went on. "She just loved your daughter. That made all the difference." "It really did." "Can I contribute to the daycare?" she asked. "I have some contacts who could help with regular donations." Richard smiled. "Of course, any help is welcome." During the opening ceremony, Richard gave an emotional speech. "This daycare represents more than just a new building in the community. It's the fulfillment of my wife Elizabeth's dream. She believed every child deserves equal opportunities in life." He glanced at Emily, who was sitting beside Dorothy in the front row. "But it also represents the wisdom of a 10-year-old girl who taught me that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account, but by their ability to love and care for others." Emily blushed at the public praise but smiled proudly. "That's why I'm proud to announce that starting today, Hope Daycare will operate at full capacity, not just providing childcare, but also vocational courses for parents, basic medical care, and psychological support for families." The audience erupted in applause. Dorothy was too moved to speak, but Richard called her to join him on the makeshift stage. "Dorothy Williams," he said, "without you, none of this would have been possible. You brought not just professionalism to this project, but the heart that Elizabeth had instilled in it from the very beginning." Dorothy finally found her voice, though it trembled with emotion. "I just followed the path Miss Elizabeth had laid out. She's the true reason behind all of this, and I want to dedicate this daycare to the memory of my daughter Grace, who taught me that a mother's love never ends. It just transforms into care for other children." Not a single dry eye remained in the crowd. Emily stood up and ran to hug Dorothy, followed by Richard. The image of the three embracing was captured in a photograph that would later become symbolic of the project. In the months that followed, Hope Daycare became a model for other social initiatives. Richard discovered that combining corporate resources with grassroots knowledge produced extraordinary results. Emily flourished with Dorothy's constant presence in their lives. The girl had developed remarkable emotional maturity while still retaining the natural joy of childhood. She spent half her weekends at Dorothy's home and the other half hosting her at their mansion. "Dad," Emily said one evening as the three of them ate dinner together, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Are you happy now?" Richard looked at Dorothy, who smiled shyly, then back at Emily. "I'm happier than I've been in a long time." "And you, Miss Dorothy?" the girl asked. "I am complete," answered the street cleaner, looking at Emily with maternal affection. "It feels as if Grace had sent me an angel to care for." "So we can be a real family?" asked Emily hopefully. Richard and Dorothy exchanged glances. Over the past months, they had developed a deep friendship based on mutual respect and their shared love for Emily, but neither had voiced any romantic feelings. "Sweetheart," Richard said carefully, "Dorothy is already part of our family, regardless of titles or official roles." "But I want it to be official," Emily insisted. "I want Miss Dorothy to be my real mother." Dorothy felt her heart race. Over the past months, she had grown more attached to Emily than she ever thought possible after losing Grace. And Richard had proven to be a very different man from the arrogant businessman she had first met. "Emily," she said gently, "what you're asking is very serious. Marriage isn't just about love. It's about compatibility, about building a life together." "But don't you get along?" the girl asked, genuinely confused. Richard smiled. "We get along very well. Dorothy has become one of the most important people in my life. Then what's the problem? Dorothy took a deep breath. The problem, my angel, is that there are big differences between us. I'm a simple woman. Your father is an important businessman. So what? Emily interrupted. You respect each other, care for each other, work well together. Isn't that what matters? Once again, the child's wisdom left the adult speechless. Richard looked at Dorothy and for the first time said aloud what he had been feeling. Dorothy, can I be honest with you? Of course. Over these past months, you've become so much more than a work partner or family friend. You've reminded me of things I'd forgotten about myself. Dorothy lowered her eyes, moved. Richard, no, let me finish. You've shown me that success isn't just about money. You've taught me to value honest work, true generosity, unconditional love. Emily watched the conversation intently, holding her breath. And Richard continued, I've realized I've fallen in love with the woman you are. With your integrity, your strength, the way you love my daughter. Dorothy looked up, surprised. Are you serious? Completely serious, but I understand if you don't feel the same. I don't want you to feel pressured. Richard, she interrupted, her voice almost a whisper, I've fallen for you too. For the man you've become these past months. For the devoted father, the purposeful businessman, the generous person hidden behind all that work. Emily could no longer contain herself. So you're getting married? Richard and Dorothy laughed, still processing their mutual confession. Easy, sweetheart, Richard said. These things take time. How much time? Emily asked impatiently. Dorothy looked at Richard. How about we explore this possibility, without rushing but with sincerity? Sounds perfect to me, he agreed. 6 months later, Richard and Dorothy married in a simple ceremony held in the courtyard of Hope Daycare Center. Emily was the flower girl and couldn't stop smiling. The ceremony brought together people from all walks of life, businessmen in suits alongside uniformed street cleaners, children from the community running among high society guests. It was exactly the kind of celebration Elizabeth would have loved. Do you think Mom would be happy? Emily asked Dorothy as they prepared for the ceremony. I'm sure she would, her new stepmother replied, adjusting the simple veil she had chosen. Your mother always wanted you to be happy, and you're glowing. And you? Are you happy? Dorothy looked in the mirror, seeing the reflection of a woman who had found a second chance to be a mother and to love. I'm happier than I ever thought possible again. The ceremony was officiated by the local justice of the peace, a kind man who had known Dorothy since she started working in the area. Richard had insisted on something formal, yet accessible, respecting the lifestyle Dorothy preferred. During the exchange of vows, Richard said, Dorothy, you taught me that true success isn't measured by what we accumulate, but by what we're able to give. I promise to be the husband you deserve and the father Emily needs. Dorothy replied, moved. Richard, you and Emily gave me back the ability to dream. I promise to honor Elizabeth's memory by being the mother Emily deserves and the wife you've earned through your transformation. Emily, as the maid of honor, had the honor of presenting the rings. They were simple gold bands, but they meant far more than any extravagant jewel. Now we're a real family, she declared when the judge pronounced the couple husband and wife. The celebration took place right there in the daycare's courtyard, with food prepared by families from the community and music provided by a local band. It was simple, but overflowing with genuine joy. Victoria, who had become a regular donor to the daycare, approached Richard during the festivities. I need to admit something, she said. What? At first I thought you were making a mistake, but seeing you together, I've never seen you so happy. Emily chose well. Richard smiled. She always knew what was best for us. I was just slow to understand. During the party, Richard watched Emily dancing with other children from the community. His daughter had blossomed into a confident, joyful, and surprisingly mature girl. Dorothy's presence in their lives had brought a balance he hadn't realized was missing. What are you thinking about? Dorothy asked, stepping closer to him. How life has changed. A year ago, I was only focused on work and social obligations. Today, I understand what truly matters. Family, purpose, making a difference in people's lives. Dorothy took his hand. And you don't miss the old life? Richard shook his head. How could I miss something so empty when I now have something so full of meaning? At that moment, Emily ran up to them. Dad, Miss Dorothy, Mom, did you see? The daycare is full of happy kids. They looked around and saw dozens of children playing, parents chatting animatedly, teenagers helping serve food. Hope Daycare had become much more than a childcare center. It was a community hub where entire families found support and opportunities. Your mother Elizabeth would be proud, Dorothy told Emily. I know, the girl replied. Sometimes I feel like she's here, watching all of this. Richard embraced the two most important women in his life. She is here, in the love you two share, in the work we do together, in the hope we've brought to this community. 3 years had passed since that memorable day when Emily chose Dorothy as her new mother. Hope Daycare had expanded and now included an elementary school and a vocational training center for adults. Richard had completely restructured his company, prioritizing social responsibility and sustainability. Dorothy had become a nationally recognized figure in community projects, invited to speak and consult in other cities. Emily, now 13, had grown into a socially conscious and engaged teenager. She was actively involved in the family's social projects and already talked about studying social work when she got to college. Dad, she said one afternoon as the three of them worked together on a new expansion for the daycare, can I tell you a secret? Of course, sweetheart. That day when you asked me to choose a new mom among those ladies. Yes? I already knew I was going to pick Miss Dorothy. I was just waiting for you to gather the courage to ask her. Richard and Dorothy exchanged glances, surprised. What do you mean? Dorothy asked. Mommy once told me that when she was gone, I'd know who should take care of me. She said my heart would recognize the right person. And your heart recognized Dorothy? Right away. From the first day I saw her on the street, I felt she was special. Then Mommy took me to get to know her better, and I was sure. Richard shook his head, amazed. So you planned everything from the start? Emily grinned mischievously. Let's just say I helped fate find the right path. Dorothy hugged her adoptive daughter. You're wiser than any adult I know. I learned from the two most amazing moms in the world, Emily replied. End of story. Now we'd love to hear your thoughts on this touching story. What did you think of little Emily's wisdom in choosing Dorothy? Do you believe children sometimes see what adults can't? Share your reflections on this tale of love, resilience, and family in the comments below. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other heartwarming stories like this one.